Meanwhile, some Republican presidential contenders are campaigning today ahead of the holiday weekend. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis spent time in New Hampshire, while Vivek Ramaswamy made his pitch to Iowa voters. Despite their efforts in early voting states, recent polling does show former President Donald Trump still holds a commanding lead over his rivals. Some of the lowest polling candidates are now facing pressure to consider dropping out and consolidating the field so that perhaps someone else could mount a strong challenge against the former president. Olivia Rinaldi and Finn Gómez join us now here at the table. Olivia is a CBS News campaign reporter. Finn is CBS News' political director. Great to have you both here. We appreciate it. Let's begin by listening to what Florida Governor Ron DeSantis had to say about former President Donald Trump.
I think at the end of the day, Trump is the best turnout machine for the Democrats, because he will ignite a lot of voters to want to come out and vote against him. And that gives the Democrats a big advantage. They know Biden's weak. They know that the direction of the country is poor, but that is their lifeline.
He's making an electability argument against former President Trump, Finn. He's not making a kind of direct case against Trump's conduct or character or policy. What do you make of DeSantis's closing argument as the Iowa caucuses loom just a few weeks away?
55 days away, Bob, and he's like, it feels like he's turning up the dial just a little bit, like a little bit more, increasing his criticism towards the front runner in this race, in this primary race. And I think that, now is the time, for these candidates to really mount their best argument to be the top alternative to Donald Trump. And I think that's what he's trying to do here.
Olivia, you've been in touch with strategists who are close to traditional Republican candidates who are not aligned with the Trump wing of the party. We talked about in the introduction to this discussion how there is pressure from some donors and others to consolidate, to shrink the field. We're getting close to December. What's going on behind the scenes to nudge people in that direction, if anything?
As you mentioned, I've spoken to some Republican operatives, and they are really encouraged by the fact that Mike Pence dropped out in October and that Tim Scott just dropped out a few weeks ago ahead of the Iowa caucuses. They see Nikki Haley on this momentum. She's rising in the polls, and they really think that there's this opportunity for someone to consolidate in the GOP, to consolidate around one candidate, especially heading into South Carolina. That's where they think they have the best opportunity to really consolidate around one candidate and take on Donald Trump in that state, heading then into Super Tuesday on March 5th.
But to become that candidate, Finn, it's really, there's a race within a race.
Right.
Governor DeSantis versus former Ambassador Haley, then former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie almost in his own space as someone who's fiercely against former President Trump. But in that dynamic between DeSantis and Haley, DeSantis is really looking for a bounce in Iowa. That's his strategy. Will he get the endorsement of Bob Vanderplaats, the longtime evangelical activist in that state?
That is the expectation, Bob. And what we're hearing from our sources in Iowa is that he is nearing that decision, and it looks like it will be the governor of Florida. There is, there's been that momentum. Our own Aaron Navarro, CBS News' Aaron Navarro reported last week in a private setting with donors that DeSantis did say that he was expecting to get this endorsement this week as early as Tuesday.
But does it matter, Finn?
It matters to a degree. It matters with evangelicals in Iowa to a degree. Just that consolidation that Olivia was just talking about, that's something that he's trying to garner. It's all in for him in Iowa. He's thrown his campaign there, as other campaigns have also thrown their sources all into Iowa. It's Iowa or bust for a lot of these guys. But there's still New Hampshire. There's only about 2 or 3 tickets out of Iowa to New Hampshire. Who can win Iowa? Means that they can get to New Hampshire. But you still look at that margin, Bob. You still look at that margin. Donald Trump is so far ahead. You're looking 30 points at the latest average of recent polls in Iowa compared to the rest of the field. There's still a long way to go for a lot of these guys.
Olivia, Finn mentioned that many contenders are putting their chips in Iowa. They're trying to make a real play for Iowa. One of those contenders is Vivek Ramaswamy. Let's hear what he had to say on the campaign trail.
Trump got as far as he was going to get, and I respect him for it. He rolled over that log, and we saw what crawled out. Now it's up to the next generation to bring the pesticide, okay?
So, Mr. Ramaswamy, the outsider, the entrepreneur, you've covered him a lot, Olivia, over the past few months. He's making this case for a generational change within the Republican Party. He's living in Iowa. He's at least bought an apartment there, rented an apartment there for the time being. What's his outlook in Iowa? And is he facing any pressure from Trump allies to maybe get out of the way? Because he is aligned with Trump, but he's still running against him, too.
Vivek Ramaswamy is going to hold 220 plus events in Iowa.
Wait, fact check. Is that possible?
I mean, he hopes to do it. He says he's planning 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., 9 p.m. some nights, doing these events, seeing as many voters as he possibly can. 200 events is nothing to sneeze at. That's a lot.
There are 99 counties in Iowa.
I didn't get the chance to ask him if he was going to do a full Grassley, but I think he might try to. DeSantis, of course, is on that course currently. He's at 98 counties, I believe, and saving something special for 99. But, it's possible. That's a lot of events to hold over a pretty large state where voters like to see effort. They like to see people going to them. They like to see people talking to them, kitchen table issues. So there might be some way for him to sort of break through in these last couple of weeks. On the question, though, of whether Trump supporters have asked him to drop out, there is a lot of that. A lot of people who go to his events are America First, Make America Great Again Republicans, and they like him, but they also like Trump, and they fear that he is taking away some of that voter share that could be going to the former president.
Yeah, I mean, he's holding seven events tomorrow. I mean, he might do like a double Grassley, frankly, at this point, if he holds to these events that he's claiming. I do want to see, Bob, like looking at New Hampshire real quick. I did have a conversation with Governor Sununu earlier today, and he's looking to make an endorsement right soon after the Thanksgiving holiday, in the weeks as early as the week after, maybe a little further out. But he's looking at those three top alternatives: DeSantis, Haley, and Christie.
Read the tea leaves up in New Hampshire. Where is he leaning?
I think he's torn. I think it could be Haley, or if DeSantis is garnering momentum. But the person that we're seeing garner the most momentum out of the early states is Nikki Haley. It's essentially her and Donald Trump who are garnering any sort of movement. So
I wonder about Governor Christie, because the former New Jersey governor,
No, you're right.
New Hampshire's
You're
an open
right.
primary.
Yeah.
And you can have those independent voters and Democrats say, we want Christie in the race.
Yeah. There are people, Democrats, who I've heard from who like Christie. They like his policies. He's not Trump, but it'll be interesting to see if he's actually able to garner some of that turnout from them.
Well, much to discuss in the coming days and weeks. Olivia, Rinaldi, Gómez, thank you very much for stopping by.